Hello, I'm Peter Martin, founder of Peach 2020, the international community for senior executives, entrepreneurs and influencers from across the hospitality sector. Welcome to this special sustainability edition of our Top Table series of podcasts, broadcast today from the Brewdog Inn Bar studio here in Waterloo in London. And today my guests are Mike Hanson, Director of Sustainable Business at WSH, which is a leading contract catering business whose operations include Baxter Story, Searcy's, Holroyd Howe and Benugo. And Claire Chalmers, a Director at Foodprint by Nutritics, the technology company specialising in sustainability solutions. Well, welcome both to the studio, our little cozy studio here. Now, today we are going to be talking about sustainability, about the industry's commitment to it, but more importantly, how it's seen from the perspective of our customers and our teams, what they like, and importantly, what they think hospitality should be doing more of. And importantly, interestingly, we'll be sharing headlines from brand new research which Nutritics have commissioned from CGA, which shows just how engaged the public and even more importantly, our frontline teams are in this move to a zero carbon world. But let's start with you, Mike. WSH, a pretty massive business providing food and drink from Amazon canteens to city boardrooms, the high street coffee shops, and even station champagne bars. But you're also a company who are totally committed to sustainability and perhaps one of the leaders in hospitality, I think. And certainly, I think the first to appoint a chief sustainability officer who you obviously work closely with. But I think it's interesting. So where does this commitment to the sustainability clause, this really strong commitment, come from?
I think it's actually been a long time, Peter. So it sounds a bit cliche, but it's actually intrinsic within our business. So right from when I joined the company, or the company was first founded in back in 2000. So I joined in 2001. And right back then, we had a decentralized supply chain, which means we used local suppliers, seasonal produce. It comes a short distance, buying from smaller producers, which generally have less intensive systems. And that was right through the business in terms of a really core belief. In 2006, because I was an operator, so I'm a caterer by trade, having been a chef many, many years ago. So I started looking after the environmental agenda way back in 2006. I ran part-time, went full-time into this role back in 2012. So it's been a long journey.
And this is not a new thing.
We've achieved all. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's not a new thing. I mean, I think, as you say, I think we were we were very proud of our history in this area. And I would say, when we were starting, having an environmental policy was quite a big thing from a corporate sustainability perspective. Although the sustainability movement's been obviously going on for years, from a corporate perspective, it's fairly recent. So, but it's we're well ensconced on the road. Yeah.
But in terms of that influence, how much comes from within because of the commitment of people like you, and how much actually comes from your clients? Well, obviously you have, interestingly, you have two bosses. You've got your clients, the companies who give you the employ you via contract, but also the people day to day coming into your canteens, boardrooms, or whatever. I mean, how is that sort of pressure? Is it pressure, or or that conversation?
Yeah, it's top down and bottom up.
Yeah, right.
So it works both ways. So as an intrinsically sustainable business, or that's what we're aspiring to be, we tend to engage with clients who are more sustainably minded. That's what they're particularly looking for. So we score quite well in that area and maintain the relationships with those clients. And as a result, it's sort of a mutual respect for each other. Clearly, we have some clients that have more requirements than others. Some we're leading the way. One of the strengths of what I like to think our business is that we're actually not only a trusted partner, but a trusted advisor.
Yeah.
So actually, we're working. I've been in sustainability a long time, and I've got colleagues that have been as well. And actually, we do quite a lot of advising and helping our clients as well. So we're on the net zero journey, and we can really help our clients on their net zero journey too.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that. But Claire, let's bring you in. Now, Nutritics, as we said, technology company, looking to provide solutions for the sector in the area of sustainability. How do you see the challenges from where you sit about within the hospitality market?
Yeah, I think we all know the list of challenges that food service operators have to contend with. If it's not the staffing crisis, it's sourcing products. If it's not sourcing products, it's the energy crisis. And the list goes on. But should we add one more to that list? Sustainability. What does it mean? Why is it important? And do consumers and your employees actually care about it? Sustainability is a challenge that some operators may see as, not really a priority. And it's more of a nice to have, and that investing in technology to support it is really at the bottom of their priority. And the main focus right now is to survive. But I think the research that we have conducted really talks to the importance and why businesses should be investing in this. If you invest in it, it can give you a competitive advantage as well as drive profitability. But talking about technology is really powerful and can help mitigate some of these challenges that the industry faces. Tech like Nutritics will allow operators to get a handle on their supply chain, improve the nutritional adequacy of their menus, reduce and control food waste, and can provide insight into the carbon and water footprint of their dishes. And tech can also provide data to give credibility to climate action strategies. And we hear that this can be a big concern for operators as they don't want to get caught out. So I think the credibility is really important. But let's not forget that tech can also automate a lot of these processes. And that reduces the burden on staff, as well as doing a lot more and helping with some social...
And obviously you picked up on consumers, your customers, and also the staff issues as well. And obviously Mike's talked a bit about that bottom-up some feedback from customers. The research itself has been very helpful because, as you said, there may be a bit of skepticism in some parts of the sector that it may not be that important. But I mean, let's pick up some of the flavour of that. It was fairly powerful from what I've read through it that, consumers are concerned about it. Was it 70% say they actively want to lead an environmentally friendly lifestyle? But actually it does come down more to what they're going to do if they are in a hospitality environment. That actually, I think there's data that sort of says how much it's going to influence and how much they might spend. You want to give us a bit more of a flavour of that, Claire? Because at the end of the day, as you said, it's about the bottom line as well. It's going to be...
Yeah, absolutely. I think nearly 50% of consumers say that the sustainability credentials of a operation actually influences their decision of which venue they go to. That is, if you can get sustainability right and you can engage with your consumers and relate to them, you're only going to drive footfall into the business, which in turn drives profitability. But not only that, understanding the carbon impact of your dishes, you can then start to reformulate your menus whilst looking at the carbon impact, but also the profitability of your dishes. And if we know that consumers want to lead active, sustainable lifestyle, then why not create dishes that have high profit margins, but really low carbon scoring? And that is one way of, when you invest in technology, that's one way of actually offsetting the cost of technology to help on that journey.
I mean, I think it's interesting what came out of the research around consumers is, one, it's only going to become more important because younger people are much more engaged than older clienteles. But the other thing, and I think something you might be able to pick up on, Mike, as well, is that I think the research showed that this is not just a niche issue for, perhaps the chattering classes, the middle classes. Actually, it goes across the customers of all, high street brands as well. I mean, are you picking that up as well? Because obviously your business, Mike, handles all sorts of, as I said, everything from an Amazon canteen to a city boardroom. I mean, are you seeing different opinions, or is it fairly constant across?
Yeah, no, it's constant across, but there are different levels of engagement within each type of business. So we've got, as you rightly say, we've got staff restaurants, we've got fine dining in boardrooms, we've got high street, etc. But we've also got schools, so we look after state schools. So
Right, indeed, yeah.
Caterlink look after state schools, and Holroyd Howe look after independent schools. And it's just huge on the agenda. I mean, it's absolutely enormous. So it's driven from all angles. So it's driven from policy. It's driven from the finance community. So actually, if there's an investment community, there's huge drivers from there, for sustainability, from customers, from employees, from our employees. I mean, it's been absolutely demonstrated that, to have a sustainable and a really strong ESG agenda attracts employees coming into your business, given that most of your employees, or a lot of your employees, will be Gen Z and possibly younger. So it's massively important to them. But yeah, no, we're seeing it right across the board, and it's not an option anymore. And I think there's been a real step change from certainly if we take COVID and lockdown as a stake in the ground. Since then, it's just been exponential growth in this area. It is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because there is a sort of wave of younger people, and it does really come through. But also, I think that's an interesting point you make about the investment community, because you're dealing with them day in, day out, and actually those are the people who may or may not want to invest in companies. And I know there's a mixed feeling within the investment community, but increasingly investors are looking for sustainability in companies. I mean, Claire, you're out there talking to operators all the time about their needs as well. What are you getting back from the operators themselves about what are they asking you guys for?
I think where I'll start on that is operators are scared.
Yeah.
Sustainability is a scary topic, and most don't know where to start, and they don't fully understand what sustainability means, because it's not just about your food print. It's the energy that you use in the business, it's the transport that you use, it's the suppliers that you're using. And I think they come to us asking for a bit of clarity. So what does sustainability mean? How can we address it? And how can we then actually communicate that to our teams and to our consumers? I think there's a desire to be able to, do carbon labels as an example. But the reality of it is that operators need to make sure that their data is accurate, so that when they produce those carbon labels and they're ready to sort of show that to their consumers, they're not going to get any backlash of any sort. There's no.
Yeah. I think 100% agree. I mean, one of the key aspects is upskilling, and those operators that are scared, they need to understand, they need to know, they need to really understand. The carbon labeling is a really great example. So we're looking at that within our business. Full scale rollout from the 1st of September within Baxter Story. We'll already do that within Benugo. And I would suggest that 80% of that engagement is actually with our teams rather than with the customers. It's so our teams can have the knowledge and the understanding how to engineer their recipes to lower the carbon footprint, so they can then have the conversation with our customers, and we can do really successful, great conversations and gentle nudges towards more sustainable choices. So education, upskilling, carbon literacy, whatever you want to call it, is the absolute key to all of this.
And again, you're looking at two levels: is making sure management, as it were, get it, but you're saying it is that frontline team. And I think, Claire, the research itself, the second part of the research was among frontline teams, was more than that, employees, but mainly frontline teams. And there seemed to be much more enthusiasm. Want to give us perhaps a sense of how strong the feeling is about sustainability and how well they think their companies are doing?
Yeah. I mean, 94% of employees consider a company's social and environmental responsibility when choosing where to work. That's massive. And we're in the middle of a staffing crisis. So, if there's only one thing that you could do, this really does support on that journey of improving the staffing crisis and getting more people into your business, working with them. But they also want to know more. They want more from their business. They want to understand what the business is actually doing to improve sustainability. But the only way that businesses can do that is to understand what's important to their employees. So what's the most important issue that their employees think there is? And that is how they will relate to their employees and bring them onto that journey. So Yeah.
So what are you finding? I mean, what are the most important issues?
Recycling, waste reduction, and the packaging that they use really does matter. 91% identify, like I said, that this is really important for them. Training, so really understanding the education piece. It's bringing them on that journey. I think they feel that they lack that education, and therefore they can't relate that, relate that conversation to their consumers. So that is,
I think purpose is a really strong point as well. I think employees now, and I think this is, again, I don't want to keep going on about COVID, but I do think it came out of that and sort of, they call it the great realization, where people actually start to think about the value of what they're doing, why they're doing it, the purpose of what they're doing, and the aligned values with the business they're working with. So I think there's an awful lot of individuals who want to know that the business that they're working with, their employer, is a good business, from an integrity perspective, is doing the right thing in the right way, honestly, looking after them, their families, the communities, the suppliers, and also the planet. I think it's just the whole thing has been swept up into a groundswell of movement towards sustainability and well-being.
Yeah, and then in a sense, going back to the hard bottom line on this, retention of staff is an obvious one. You'll save recruitment costs if you have that environment, that right environment. Sustainability is part of that. You picking that up with your people.
Absolutely. It's absolutely key. And we've got one of the things we're looking at. I mentioned obviously education and training. I don't think any business really wants or needs a great big sustainability team. Why have a sustainability team when you can actually have a sustainability army? You get everybody to a level. You educate everybody to a level that they already are at with HR teams and finance and health and safety. They already know all of this level stuff, and they need that sort of level of understanding with the sustainability. And then you can really start to drive.
It's not something you do to people, it's you do with people.
Absolutely right, yeah.
And I mean, I think that comes through clearly in the research. People that keenness to get involved from, particularly on the front line, is absolutely there. So I think it's your people are pushing an open door if they want to go down that front.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 84% of employees are more likely to stay in a job for longer if their employee has positive environmental impact. But not only that, with commitment to good practice in their own lives, they're ready to help businesses on their sustainability journeys. And I think that's...
But I think also, what having read the research, what comes out of it is that in terms of teams, I think people feel they're doing quite well on packaging and recycling and waste, but not necessarily on some of the other things like training and some of that. I think being involved in the community more. So there's more to be done. Well, I think going back to consumers though, right? I think if we looked at those guys in terms of what they want to see again, it is around some of those fundamentals of are you doing enough on waste? Are you doing enough on recycling? Are you doing enough on local sourcing? And those are obvious things to demonstrate as people walk through the door. I mean, Mike, if you're going into say one of your canteens or one of your boardrooms, I mean, how are you, as it were, communicating that commitment to your customers, whether they're the corporate customers or the people, the consumers day in, day out?
I think it's a great question, and it's one of the things that really interests me within sustainability is psychology and actually talking to people in the right way. So actually, everyone talks about framing your conversation to meet your audience, and how it's about having that conversation. But it's largely, rather than telling people that this is what you're supposed to be doing, say this is why we're doing it, and it's the what is the why. Yeah. And then people are like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand now actually why, for example, the beef is red, and it's because it's got a higher carbon footprint, and I can have it, but not often, less and better wherever possible. And it's understanding rather than saying, I'm just going to take beef off the menu, because that doesn't work. That fundamentally doesn't work. Taking something away doesn't work. It's engaging with the customer, with the client to actually understand why, and then they can give them enough information to make that informed choice. And that's where Nutritics comes in, giving them that enough information to make that informed choice.
Yeah. And so how you use it? It is on that labeling.
Well, actually, we interestingly, we actually have 3 elements to Nutritics now. So we actually we do the allergens, calories, and we also now do the carbon footprinting. The reason we chose Nutritics is because the nature of our business, I mentioned we have a decentralized supply chain, our operations are decentralized. So each location runs like their own little business, which means that they can create their own menus and their own recipes on a daily basis. So they need the opportunity to be able to, at the front end, put in their own recipe, which will spit out the allergens, the calories, and the carbon footprint by as they do it. Which also means that with the education, the chefs can engineer the recipe to take it from a red to an amber, say.
Yeah.
And it gives them that flexibility.
It's interesting, because obviously there is sometimes a lot of skepticism among the public as a whole about greenwashing or whatever, but obviously you're going into the real technical areas there. How confident are you, and how confident are your team about the data you're getting back? Presumably they are working with that day in, day out, and they're
absolutely. And we're right at the start of the journey. And as Claire mentioned, I think you both mentioned it, data is absolutely key.
Yeah.
It is data is king here. It's quality of data, understanding where you're going. You need to know where you've been, and what you've been doing. So we need to know the footprint from the menus now. Make sure that the teams understand what needs to be in terms of menu balance, but also where we need to go to and what we need to do and why we're getting there. And I think that the only way you can do that is with data. And that's where this, Nutritics footprint and other systems come into their own in terms of providing that data.
Yeah, and that's actually giving your teams a confidence.
Absolutely.
And to consumers.
Yep.
I mean, Claire, again, because there's all sorts out there. People at different stages of the journey. I mean, and consumers, as we know from the research, not as about a third of people said they'll pay more for sustainably sourced food. Others won't. So not everybody's like that. We know that. But say within companies, I mean, what's your sense of how people are going down that journey? Because obviously WSH are fairly well advanced, but not everybody is. So how are you bringing them along? What sort of conversations are you having with them? Because you said there's a nervousness. Let's put it that way. A lot of the operators.
Yeah, I think we just strip it back a little bit, and we take it back to the beginning to really address, okay, how can we ensure that the data that you have in the business is accurate? So the food data that you have, let's look at your supply chain. Let's look at where you're sourcing your products from. With all of that, we then reformulate menus. We help on that journey to reformulate the menu. Engage the employees, get them brought into the journey. We help businesses to communicate to their employees so that they can bring them in on that journey. And then ultimately that will all just then feed down to the consumer, and the consumer is the end point, and that's the end goal.
Yeah.
But there is a big journey to go on to get there. And we're really at the beginning, and we're at the beginning with a lot of businesses. And I think operators just need to understand that there's a huge amount of work that's going to go into it, but you're not alone. There are people who can help. And everyone should be engaging and learning from their peers. And WSH are a really great example, of a business that has executed this really well. And I'm sure there's been plenty of challenges along the way that you'll happily share. But we need to do this together, and it's the only way that we will overcome this challenge.
Yeah, totally. It sounds it's a bit cliche, but collaboration is the key.
Yeah,
and I think across the sector. So we're founding members of the Zero Carbon Forum, which is a hospitality-based, non-competitive collaborative forum to drive us in at zero pace. And it means we're all working together. So if we're looking to decarbonize chicken, for example, or source chicken with a lower carbon footprint, but actually working with people like KFC and Nando's puts you in quite a strong position.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Or the same with beef, working with Gaucho and McDonald's and Burger King. Again, it puts you in a strong position. So together, and I think one of the really strong things around hospitality is the way we always work together as a sector when we need to. And I think I would say probably we're one of the first industries to actually have a collaborative forum in that way. It's really strong, and it's
and it is growing day by day.
Absolutely.
More companies joining up as well. And I think you're absolutely right. One of the strengths has always been collaboration, even amongst potentially strong competitors. It works. It certainly works. That's within the. What about the supply chain, though, Mike? I mean, because obviously a lot of the issues are in the supply chain. I mean, you're getting produce in. I mean, what is your relationship with the supply chain? How engaged are you finding them?
More and more so all the time. They have to be because they're going to get left behind, and we won't be using them if they don't. But also, so you've got a position, or some of the bigger players, some of the really large suppliers that we work with are already well on this journey. But as I mentioned, the nature of our supply chain, now we've got some suppliers that are, metaphorically one man and a dog.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, actually, that's what's really important is for us to then work with them, to help them on that journey. And I think that's where other organisations such as Nutritics, the forum, etc., we actually engaging at all levels. And I think that's the point. We can't leave anyone behind on this. We're all in it, and together we're all going to get there together. We have a huge number of butchers across WSH, and we need to work with all of those butchers to get to a perspective where we are using a lower carbon product. And we're actually helping them understand and helping them with their connections to look after soil and to maybe source regeneratively, etc.
Yeah. And obviously, I've been doing some work with the NFU as well. I mean, certainly that's agriculture is part of the solution, but again, engaging in it as well. And I think they could do with some help from hospitality as well, particularly helping getting the data they need out of people like DEFRA as well. But there's a whole political issue there as well.
Absolutely.
But I think my sense is that although we are at the start of a journey, and obviously you've been on a journey for a lot longer than most. It's definitely all going in one direction. Not everybody's there, but people are going in that direction. I mean, Claire, from your point of view, how you're seeing it from a commercial point of view. I mean, how rapid are you anticipating the move towards zero carbon and a more sustainable industry?
Yeah, I think we're a couple of years off.
Yeah, I agree with you. We're nowhere near. We are a long way. It's a long way to go. But as you said, we've started. We're on the journey. Everyone's learning, and the key is everyone's learning.
Yeah,
everyone's learning, and everyone's learning fast. And the people that don't know as much as other people can learn from those people. And as long as those people are happy to share, which they are, then we'll all get there in the end. I think there is a real, pardon the pun, appetite.
Yeah,
there. There's an understanding that actually we have to get there. We have no choice. And if you as an individual company don't want to do it, you're going to get left behind. There's just no question about it.
Yeah, and actually that bottom line you've been talking about, Claire, is, one, you can save on your staff because you won't have any staff because, the majority want to work for sustainably conscious companies, and also the consumers are increasingly engaged in sustainability and in terms of waste, whatever it is that hooks them in, that's certainly there. And I think what's coming through is, that nervousness needs to be overcome and the communication needs to improve, and we'll be doing things, bit by bit. So, Mike, let's finish up with you in terms of what next from WSH, because you've got a lot of initiatives out there. What's next on the horizon or on the board agenda on the sustainability?
Well, we've just recently launched our ESG strategy across WSH called Second Nature, made up of 4 key pillars. Progressive partnerships, all about supply chain, growing and nurturing talent, all about social impact. Step up, clearly climate action, waste and nature positive, and then obviously looking at governance across the whole piece. I think a key part of that is our net zero strategy. So we're committed to net zero by 2040 across the full value chain. We have just recently submitted to SBTi for our science-based and flag targets. So we feel like we're making sort of big steps forward. It's becoming sustainability, and Claire absolutely knocked the nail on the head earlier when she said it's sustainability has always used to be a nice to have. It was a bolt-on, and it was like, okay, well, we've got a question, wheel Mike out, he answers it, wheel him back in again. But actually now it's intrinsic. Everybody, it's right at the core of the business. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And it feels very, very real and really huge part of the business now. So it's a really exciting time.
You're doing a lot. You just list it. Now, from Claire, you've got that broader view because you're looking and talking to a lot of companies out there. Anything which is exciting you're seeing out there, which people are doing, which saying, yeah, that is really good.
Yeah, I think talk about Pizza Pilgrims. I love the sustainability journey that they're on and their story around the basil that they use, and that they've switched from sourcing that from Israel and bringing that into a homegrown farm in the UK. So reducing the travel emissions and the carbon impact of transporting that basil over. So businesses like that who are looking for unique new technology to help improve their sustainability within their supply chain, but also within their business themselves. I think if you walk into any Benugo, you'll see the carbon labels on their dishes, on their countertop. I actually think that starts a really good conversation with consumers.
Yes.
And so there's a whole heap that can be done. And I think the important thing is to take small chunks and, slowly you'll work your way through it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was at, I had a visit to Wild Farm yesterday, which is a farming cooperative over in near Swindon. They've actually got nearly 60 farms across the UK. Founder is Andy Cato. Those of us at a certain age might remember Gruyere Armada. Well, he was half of Gruyere Armada. And regeneratively farmed flour. And it is just such an amazing story about regenerating ecosystems, soil quality, producing an amazing, amazing product. And our customers are really interested in that, really keen to understand why. And actually, when you start that conversation, everything starts to fall into place.
And it is conversation almost like we're having here about, I didn't know that. Yeah. People are doing great things. And I think it's interesting, use Pizza Pilgrims, people will say, growing basil, that's small. But actually, that will hit your teams and your customers. It's the story. It's emblematic, isn't it? And say, this matters. This is what people are saying.
It's the story behind it. Not so much the product, but the story as to the why. This is what it's for, and this is what we do, and this is how it's going to escalate and grow. Yeah. Pardon the pun again. As we move forward, it's all great stuff.
And I think that sums it up, because if we go back to that research, the thing that came through our both bits of research is we need more communication. Yeah. Customers need more communication. It's not necessarily about what certification you've got, but actually what you're doing, and it's the same with staff. So we brought that around. So I think we need to share a few more stories, and more conversations like this. But for the moment, Claire, Mike, thank you very much for the last half hour.
Absolutely.
It's been enthralling.
That was great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to my guests today, and thank you for Brewdog here for hosting us here in Waterloo. Don't forget to listen in, and if you do, like, rate and subscribe, and make sure you don't miss our future episodes. So until the next time, bye.